Hey everybody! This tutorial is going to introduce you to something called the Mastery Connect Mastery Tracker. Mastery Connect is a product that Wake County has purchased for all of its teachers, and the tracker feature is the central feature of Mastery Connect. It allows you to track whether your students have achieved mastery or whether they are near mastery on a given standard within your curriculum. This is kind of going to be a long tutorial because the Mastery Tracker, being the central feature of Mastery Connect, relies on assessments, it relies on resources, and it relies on lessons from everywhere else within the Mastery Connect community. And so in part one, I'm going to show you how to set up a Mastery Tracker, and then in part two, I'm going to show you how to use the assessments within the Mastery Connect community or the assessments that you create yourself to utilize the Mastery Tracker fully. So to get into Mastery Connect, the first thing you're going to do is join. And you'll join using your Wake County Google Wake ID. And I'm just going to log in, sign in with Google. When you log in, this will be your dashboard. And you'll see up here is where your main tabs are at the very top. We're going to start here with trackers. And trackers, it's easier to think of trackers as classrooms because what you're really tracking is your classroom's progress towards content mastery. So the best thing to do is to start by adding your tracker. And you'll pick your subject, and here are your core subjects. If you pick another subject, there will be other curriculum documents available. I'm going to pick science. And you'll notice when I pick my subject, it automatically selects the standards document that's currently in force for that content area. And then you pick your grade level, or if you're teaching a high school course, you pick your course that you're teaching. And then you name your tracker. And again, it's easier to think of trackers as classes because you're tracking your class's progress. And I would go ahead and select a folder color. In my case, we'll pick Carolina Blue. And then you're going to tell the tracker how you want to add students to that tracker or class. I would recommend adding students individually, and you'll see why in a minute. One thing I forgot to point out is that if you ever need help, you'll sometimes see on the right or left-hand side of the screen these little video icons. These are video tutorials that will show you what to do. If you ever don't see this though, up here under your name is a little help menu. The help menu is quite extensive and often contains video tutorials or step-by-step instructions with screen capture pictures, which I have found exceedingly useful in trying to figure out exactly what I'm doing on Mastery Connect. So once you've got all this filled out, create your tracker. All right. This is why I recommend that you add your students individually. This is going to be your default option, which is add from the student information system. In this instance, this will be PowerSchool for us. Wake County, because it purchased this, it integrated Mastery Connect with PowerSchool. So when you start typing a student's name into Mastery Tracker, into Mastery Connect, students will actually start to come up. So for example, if you typed, I don't know, let's just pick three letters. You'll notice that it starts picking children. And it says their school. This is a useful feature because it already plugs in their first name, their last name, and their student ID. This is a very helpful feature because when you start using assessments or you input assessments into Mastery Connect, it will actually print out bubble sheets that are pre-bubbled with their names and their student ID numbers, which makes the grade cam function in Mastery Connect very useful. So I would recommend using the add from SIS function to put students into your Mastery Tracker. Because I don't want to use any quote-unquote real students for this, I'm just going to add my default students in here, Misty and Marty, just so that you can see what it'll look like. So this is a mastery tracker for 8th grade science. And you'll see that the standards are listed in the order that they're listed in the actual standards document, which can be useful. However, it's not always the order that you teach your standards in. For instance, I know that in 8th grade science, these standards for instance, right here, the physical science chemistry standards are not what's taught first in the year. I believe currently the hydrosphere standards are taught first, so I think we should move them. So let's do that. Let's drag these standards by clicking and holding on this 4-pointed arrow box and dragging them where they belong. Oh, didn't quite get that one where I wanted it to go. And you'll notice that when you hover over the standard number, that it also shows you what standard you're looking at. So that's a handy little feature. So you can order your standards by what do you teach first, what do you teach last, maybe what you're teaching right this minute so that you can look on the screen exactly what you're teaching now. It really is up to you exactly what you're looking at. If you want to look at the standard a little bit more closely, you can just roll your cursor over this arrow and click View Standard. And it will display the standard exactly as it's written in your official standards document. You're also able to customize or reword your standards. So if you want to write down, for example, I can statements, or if you want to simplify the language into something that a layperson, like a parent or a student, could read on a report card, you could do that as well. There is an ability for you to print out reports to send home. There's also a student and parent portal that is available in Mastery Connect if you wish to activate that feature. And you can make the customized standard the default view rather than having a parent or student try to read and interpret this language. You can reword and customize. So it is a pretty nifty feature right there. So that's all we're going to talk about with this area right here for the moment. There are a couple of other things I want to talk about in this menu here. You can view the entire standards document if you wish. You're also able to add standards from outside your own curriculum. So if this is the 8th grade science curriculum, one of the things that often happens in science is that you have to be able to prove evidence that you read in text. So this is literature, but in informational text, we often have to cite textual evidence. So I'm going to add this language arts standard to my science mastery tracker, and it just sticks it all the way here in the back. And I can teach to this standard, and I can assess this little standard here the same way that I would assess any other science standard. And you can do that for any subject, whether it be math, science, social studies, language arts, or any other subject, dance, fine arts, performing arts. It does not matter. So that's a nice little feature that's available. You can also add collaborators. So if you're working as a PLT to see whose standards are able to master what content best, you can add other teachers. So for example, if I was to add Ms. Gibson to this, I would type in the name of a teacher and add a teacher. If I wanted to add Ms. Thompson as the science department administrator to this, I could add Ms. Thompson, and I could add them as collaborators. That comes in very handy as you're trying to work as a collaborative PLT. And for example, if my students were not mastering the hydrosphere and Sarah's were, I could ask Sarah, why? How are your students doing so well? What are you doing that's different from what I'm doing? And you can compare and contrast what's going on. But you have the hard data and the hard evidence to understand what's going. It's sometimes is, you have your anecdotal evidence, and anecdotal evidence is very effective, but hard data is also very helpful to back up what you see in the classroom. So that is essentially what a mastery tracker is and what it looks like. One last thing before we end this video. There is something out there called a power standard, and I don't want to leave you without saying what it is. A power standard is something that must be mastered before students can move on in the curriculum. Let's see. Aha. So for example, this standard right here, you have to understand this standard in order to be able to move on to E.1.4. So if I want to set this as a power standard, I simply click Set as Power Standard, and a little P shows up above it. That more is just a little reminder in my head that I need to see mastered, or green, for each of these students under E.1.3. When I'm ready to unset it as a power standard, I just click Unset as Power Standard. And you can select one power standard in your curriculum at a time. But once you're ready to set something as a power standard, you can do that. And when you're done, you can unselect it. All right, that's the end of this tutorial. I'm going to move on to part 2 to show you how to add assessments to your tracker, how to add resources to your tracker, and how to use the grading tool. Thanks. Bye.